The crystal chandeliers of the Grandview Ballroom cast elegant shadows across my mother's 60th birthday celebration. I stood near the dessert table watching my family mingle with their usual performative grace. My sister Victoria held court at the center table, her designer dress catching the light as she gestured dramatically about her recent promotion to regional sales director. "Maya, darling, come sit with us," my mother called out, her voice carrying that particular tone she reserved for addressing disappointments. I walked over, my simple black dress suddenly feeling inadequate next to Victoria's extravagance. My brother-in-law Marcus pulled out a chair. "How's the apartment hunt going? Still in that place downtown?" "I'm comfortable where I am," I replied, settling into my seat. Victoria's laugh cut through the ambient music. "Comfortable? Maya, you're 30 years old and still renting that studio apartment. When are you going to actually invest in property like an adult?" The table fell into that familiar rhythm of concerned family members offering unsolicited advice. My Aunt Patricia leaned forward, diamonds glinting at her throat. "Your cousin Jennifer just bought a 3-bedroom condo. Perhaps she could give you some tips." "I appreciate the concern, but I'm managing fine," I said, keeping my voice steady. My father set down his wine glass with a heavy sigh. "Maya, we're not trying to embarrass you. We're worried. You work at that little property management office making what? 40,000 a year? Your sister is pulling in 6 figures. Victoria's smile widened. "Actually, Dad, with my bonus this year, I'm looking at closer to 230,000. We're thinking of buying a vacation home in Cabo." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Mom beamed, then turned to me with barely concealed disappointment. "You see, Maya? This is what happens when you apply yourself. Victoria has a career. She has assets. She has a future." I took a slow sip of my champagne, letting the bubbles fizz on my tongue. The Grandview Ballroom was one of my favorite properties in my portfolio. The limestone facade, the imported Italian marble floors, the hand-painted ceiling murals. I'd personally overseen every renovation detail 3 years ago. "I'm happy for Victoria," I said simply. My Uncle Robert joined the conversation, his voice booming across the table. "Maya, I have a friend who runs a corporate recruiting firm. Real estate development companies are always hiring administrative assistants. I could put in a word." "Administrative assistant," I repeated, nodding slowly. "That's thoughtful of you, Uncle Robert." Victoria reached across the table and patted my hand with exaggerated sympathy. "We're not judging you, Maya. Not everyone is cut out for high-pressure careers. Some people are just meant to live simpler lives. There's no shame in that." The entire table murmured in agreement, their faces arranged in expressions of concern that barely masked their pity. My younger cousin Sophie, fresh out of college and already working at my father's accounting firm, chimed in. "Maybe you should consider going back to school? Get an MBA or something." "I have an MBA, I reminded her gently. "From Northwestern." "Oh right," Sophie flushed. "But that was 8 years ago. Maybe the market's just competitive in your field." My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "I had such high hopes when you were young, Maya. You were always so bright, so full of potential. I just don't understand where we went wrong." "You didn't go wrong anywhere, Mom," I assured her. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his arm draped possessively around Victoria's shoulders. "The thing is, Maya, at some point you have to be honest with yourself about your capabilities. Not everyone can be a high achiever. The world needs workers too, you know? People to answer phones, file paperwork, manage small tasks." I watched him carefully, this man who'd been embezzling from his company for the past 6 months. My security team had documented everything. I was waiting for the right moment to hand over the evidence to his board of directors. "That's very philosophical, Marcus," I said. The dinner service began and conversation shifted to safer topics. Victoria dominated the discussion, detailing her upcoming vacation plans, her new car, her recent shopping trip to Milan. My mother listened with rapt attention, asking questions and offering enthusiastic praise. "And the house," Victoria announced, pausing for dramatic effect. "Marcus and I are putting an offer on the Morrison estate. 5 bedrooms, pool, tennis court. It's a bit of a stretch financially, but we believe in investing in quality." My father raised his glass. "Now that's how you build wealth. Real estate is everything." "Exactly," Victoria agreed. "Which is why we worry about Maya. Renting at 30 is just throwing money away. She could be building equity. I pushed my salmon around my plate, saying nothing. My mother's best friend, Linda, arrived late and bustled over to our table in a cloud of perfume and apologies. I'm so sorry, Gloria. The traffic was terrible. But I wouldn't miss this for anything. She kissed my mother's cheek and surveyed the room. This venue is absolutely stunning. How did you find this place? Victoria found it, my mother said proudly. She has such excellent taste. Victoria preened. I have a contact in the events industry. She recommended the Grandview. Apparently it's under new ownership and they're being very selective about bookings. We were lucky to get in. It's magnificent, Linda gushed. The attention to detail is remarkable. I smiled into my champagne glass. The attention to detail was remarkable because I'd spent 18 months and $4 million ensuring every aspect of this venue exceeded 5-star luxury standards. As dinner wound down, my brother Christopher arrived from his shift at the hospital. He was the only family member who'd ever treated me with genuine respect, though even he didn't know the full extent of my success. Sorry I'm late, he said, sliding into the empty seat beside me. Emergency surgery ran long. How's everyone? Your sister was just telling us about her apartment situation, my mother said, her tone heavy with significance. Christopher raised an eyebrow. What apartment situation? She's still renting, Victoria explained as if discussing a terminal diagnosis. We're trying to encourage her to make better life choices. Maya makes her own choices, Christopher said mildly. And she seems to be doing fine. Fine isn't exceptional, my father countered. We raised our children to be exceptional. Christopher opened his mouth to respond, but I placed a hand on his arm. It's okay. They mean well. The birthday cake arrived, an elaborate 3-tiered creation decorated with edible gold leaf and sugar flowers. My mother's eyes welled with tears as everyone sang. She blew out the candles while Victoria captured every moment on her phone for social media. Speech, someone called out. My mother stood, dabbing at her eyes. Thank you all for coming to celebrate with me. 60 years old, I never thought I'd see this day. I'm blessed with a wonderful family. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the table. Well, mostly wonderful. I have my successful daughter Victoria, my brilliant son Christopher, and my Maya, who I'm sure will find her path eventually. The applause was polite but pointed. Victoria glowed under the praise. Christopher squeezed my hand under the table. I maintained my serene smile. As dessert was served, the venue manager approached our table. Gerald was one of my best employees, discreet, professional, and excellent at his job. I saw him hesitate at the edge of the celebration, an envelope in his hand. Excuse me, he said quietly. I'm sorry to interrupt. My mother looked up, slightly annoyed. Yes. Gerald's eyes found mine. Ms. Rodriguez, I apologize for the intrusion, but the property documents for your hotel chain need your signature tonight. The lawyers are waiting for the contracts on the Chicago and Boston acquisitions. The table fell completely silent. Victoria's fork clattered against her plate. I'm sorry, what? Gerald maintained his professional composure. The purchase agreements for the Chicago Sinclair Hotel and the Boston Metropolitan. Ms. Rodriguez asked to review them personally before close of business today. My mother's face had gone completely blank. Ms. Rodriguez? You mean our Maya? Yes, ma'am, Gerald confirmed. Ms. Maya Rodriguez, owner of the Grandview Hotel Group. This ballroom is part of her property portfolio. Marcus's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. You own this venue? I set down my champagne glass and accepted the envelope from Gerald. Thank you. I'll review these in the office after the party. Very good, ma'am. And congratulations again on the Chicago acquisition. $3.2 billion is quite a portfolio valuation. He withdrew, leaving a silence so complete I could hear the ice melting in the water glasses. Victoria's mouth opened and closed several times before words emerged. This is impossible. You can't possibly, Gerald, there's been some mistake. But Gerald had already disappeared into the crowd, and the reality was settling over my family like fog. My Aunt Patricia had gone pale, her hand clutching her pearl necklace. Uncle Robert looked like he was doing complex mathematics in his head, trying to reconcile the woman before him with the failure he'd spent years pitying. Say something, my mother whispered, her voice barely audible. I took another sip of champagne, letting the moment breathe. I'd imagined this scenario 1,000 times over the years. The revelation, the shock, the inevitable scrambling for explanations. I'd never expected it to feel so quiet, so anticlimactic. After years of building in secret, the truth was finally out, and all I felt was tired. "What would you like me to say?" I asked calmly. My father's face had turned a deep crimson. "You let us believe you were struggling. You let us worry about you, offer you help while you were..." He gestured helplessly at the opulent ballroom around us. "While I was what? Successful? Building something extraordinary?" I set down my glass with deliberate precision. "Yes, I did. And I'd do it again." Sophie's voice came out shrill with disbelief. "But you never said anything. You never corrected us. Would you have believed me?" I challenged. "If I'd walked into a family dinner 5 years ago and told you I owned a hotel empire, what would you have said?" The silence was answer enough. Victoria had pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. "Grandview Hotel Group," she read aloud, her voice shaking. "Founded 2015. 17 properties. Luxury boutique hotels and event venues. CEO and founder Maya Rodriguez." She looked up, her perfectly made-up eyes wide with shock. "This is real. This is actually real." "Of course it's real," I replied. "Did you think Gerald was in on some elaborate joke?" Marcus was still scrolling, his face growing paler by the second. Portfolio valuation $3.2 billion. Recent acquisitions include the Metropolitan Hotel Boston, the Sinclair Chicago, and the Harbor Towers residential complex. He stopped, looking directly at me. "The Harbor Towers? You said you live in the penthouse there." "I do. Penthouse B. $12 million purchase price. Another $3 million in renovations. It took 18 months to get everything exactly right." My mother made a strangled sound. $15 million. On an apartment. "On my home," I corrected. "There's a difference." Uncle Robert found his voice again, though it lacked its usual boom. "Maya, this doesn't make sense. We've been to your apartment downtown. That tiny studio is one of 48 units in a building I own," I finished. "I use it as an office space sometimes, particularly when I'm overseeing projects in the downtown district. It's convenient and practical." "But you drove us to dinner in that Honda," Sophie protested, as if catching me in a lie. "I drive a Honda Civic because it's reliable, economical, and doesn't draw attention. I also own a Tesla Model S for longer trips, a Range Rover for winter weather, and a 1967 Porsche 911 for weekends when I want something fun. They're kept in climate-controlled storage at my building." Each detail I added seemed to deepen their shock. Victoria had set down her phone, her hands trembling slightly. How did you do all this?" I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself the luxury of complete honesty. "Do you really want to know? Because it's not a particularly glamorous story. There's no secret inheritance, no lucky lottery win. Just work. A lot of very hard, very boring work." "Tell us," my father demanded. "Fine." I folded my hands in my lap, organizing the story I'd never told. When I finished my MBA at Northwestern, I had $60,000 in student loans and $8,000 in savings. "You told me to get a real job, something stable with benefits. Remember?" He nodded slowly. I didn't listen. I spent 6 months working 3 jobs. Administrative assistant during the day, bartender at night, weekend shifts doing bookkeeping for small businesses. I lived on rice and beans in a 1-room apartment that cost $400 a month. I saved every penny. My mother's eyes were glistening. "Maya." By the end of those 6 months I had $32,000 saved. I used that as a down payment on my first property, a distressed hotel in a declining neighborhood. The place was a disaster. 70-year-old building, failing infrastructure, abysmal online reviews. The owner was desperate to sell. I could still remember that building, the peeling wallpaper and sagging floors. I bought it for $400,000. The bank thought I was insane to take on that much debt. He thought I was insane. Victoria called me and told me I was throwing my life away. Victoria flinched at the memory. I spent the next year learning everything about hotel operations. I worked as housekeeping staff at competing hotels to understand their systems. I shadowed maintenance crews. I studied supply chain logistics and hospitality management. And I renovated that hotel room by room, doing a lot of the work myself to save money. The memories flooded back. The exhaustion, the constant fear of failure, the loneliness of working while everyone else slept. 18 months after purchase, I had a boutique hotel with excellent reviews, 95% occupancy, and I was turning a profit. I took that profit and bought the next property. Then the next. But $3.2 billion, my Uncle Robert protested. That's not just buying a few hotels. No, I agreed. It's not. It's strategic acquisitions, property development, understanding market trends before they happen. It's identifying undervalued properties in neighborhoods about to gentrify. It's buying distressed assets from owners who don't understand their value. I pulled out my phone and opened my company portfolio. The Grandview Ballroom where we're sitting? I bought this building 5 years ago for $8 million. It was a former department store, completely gutted inside. I spent $4 million on renovations, turning it into a luxury event venue. It's now valued at $23 million and books out 18 months in advance. I scrolled through images. The Metropolitan Hotel in Boston? Former office building. Bought for $12 million, converted for $18 million, current value $65 million. The Sinclair in Chicago? Historic property facing foreclosure. Bought for $26 million, renovated for $15 million, current value $98 million. Sophie was staring at the screen, her face ashen. You're not just rich. You're incredibly wealthy. I'm successful, I corrected. There's a difference. Wealthy suggests inherited money or luck. I built every dollar of this from scratch. Marcus had regained some of his composure, though his voice still shook slightly. The Morrison estate. You said you own it. I do. I bought it 8 months ago for $17 million. The family who owned it had fallen on hard times. Medical debt, business losses. They needed to sell quickly. I gave them a fair price and immediate closing. Victoria made a choked sound. We were planning to offer $14 million. We thought we were being generous. You were lowballing them, I said bluntly. The property is worth at least $22 million. I'm planning to restore the main house and convert the grounds into 8 luxury condominiums. Estimated project value after completion is $45 million. My father had buried his face in his hands. We didn't know. Maya, we had no idea. You didn't want to know, I corrected gently. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you changed the subject or offered unsolicited advice about careers I should pursue instead. After a while I stopped trying. Aunt Patricia finally found her voice. That property management job you mentioned. I manage properties, I confirmed. My properties. I have a staff of 86 people across my various holdings. Property managers, maintenance crews, housekeeping, event coordinators, legal team, financial advisors. I directly oversee all major operational decisions. 86 employees, my mother repeated numbly. Actually, that's just corporate and management staff. Including all hotel and venue employees, it's closer to 800 people. I sign 800 paychecks every 2 weeks. The weight of that number settled over the table. 800 families depending on my business decisions, my leadership, my ability to keep the company profitable and growing. Victoria found her voice first. This is a joke. Some kind of elaborate prank. I assure you it's not a joke, I said calmly. Gerald has worked for me for 6 years. He manages all my East Coast properties. My father's hands were shaking. You own this venue. You own a hotel chain. 17 properties across 8 states, I confirmed. Hotels, event venues, and luxury residential buildings. The Grandview Group has been in business for 9 years. My mother's face had gone from confusion to something approaching anger. 9 years. You've been lying to us for 9 years. I haven't lied about anything, I corrected gently. I work in property management. That's completely true. I just happen to manage my own properties. Christopher was the only one smiling. The studio apartment downtown. That's not where you live, is it? It's one of my properties. I use it as an office sometimes. My actual residence is the penthouse at the Harbor Towers. The Harbor Towers? Sophie gasped. Those penthouses go for $8 million. Mine was $12 million after renovations, I said. I wanted the double-height ceilings and the roof terrace. Victoria's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her shock. This doesn't make sense. You're always so quiet, so modest. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. I drive a 2015 Honda Civic because it's reliable and fuel-efficient, I explained. My other vehicles, the Tesla, the Range Rover, and the vintage Porsche, are kept in climate-controlled storage. I don't feel the need to prove anything with a car. Marcus had begun scrolling frantically on his phone. Grandview Hotel Group. Founded 2015 by Maya Rodriguez. Portfolio valued at, he choked slightly, $3.2 billion. Currently ranked 7th in the luxury boutique hotel sector nationwide. My Uncle Robert's booming voice had reduced to a whisper. $3.2 billion. As of last quarter, I confirmed. The Chicago acquisition will push us closer to $4 billion. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against her plate. No one moved to clean it up. Everyone was staring at me as if I'd suddenly grown a second head. How? My father managed. How is this possible? I settled back in my chair, finally allowing myself to drop the meek persona I'd maintained for so long. Do you remember when I graduated from Northwestern with my MBA? You told me I was wasting my time, that I should just get a normal job with benefits. He nodded mutely. I had already started my first company during my final year of business school. I saw an opportunity in the boutique hotel market, high-end properties with personalized service that could compete with the major chains. I bought my first distressed property with loans and my savings, renovated it, made it profitable within 8 months. I paused, letting them absorb this. I used the profits to buy the next property, then the next. I kept my expenses minimal. That studio apartment downtown, the old car, simple clothes. Every dollar I made went back into acquisitions and renovations. Victoria's voice came out as a croak. But you never said anything. Would you have listened? I asked simply. Every family gathering was about my failures, my disappointments, my inability to live up to expectations. It became easier to let you believe what you wanted to believe. Christopher was grinning openly now. This is incredible. The Morrison estate, I continued, looking at Victoria. The one you're putting an offer on? I own that property. It's part of my luxury residential portfolio. I've been planning to convert it into high-end condominiums. Marcus's face had progressed from gray to green. You own the Morrison estate? I own most of the premium real estate in this city, I said. The office building where Dad's accounting firm leases space? The medical complex where Christopher works. I'm the majority stakeholder. That contact Victoria has in the events industry who recommended this venue? She works for me. My mother had started crying, but I couldn't tell if it was from shock or something else. Why would you let us treat you that way? Why would you let us believe you were struggling? Because I wanted to see who you really were, I said quietly. I wanted to understand what you valued. Turns out it wasn't me, it was the appearance of success. As long as you thought I was a failure, you felt comfortable patronizing me, offering me scraps of advice, treating me like a charity case. My father's hands were gripping the edge of the table. That's not fair, Maya. Isn't it? Tonight alone I've been told I'm not cut out for high-pressure careers, that I should accept my limitations, that I'm throwing my life away. Victoria called me an embarrassment. You, Dad, said you don't understand where you went wrong raising me. I kept my voice level, free of accusation. Those aren't the words of people who see me as an equal. Those are the words of people who need someone to look down on. The silence that followed was deafening. Around us, other party guests had begun to notice something was wrong at our table, but no one approached. My Aunt Patricia cleared her throat. Maya, sweetie, we didn't mean. You did mean it, I interrupted gently. You all meant exactly what you said. You believed it. And that's fine. People show you who they are through their actions. Gerald reappeared at a discreet distance, waiting for acknowledgement. I nodded to him. Ms. Rodriguez, your guests have arrived in the executive lounge. They're ready when you are. Thank you, Gerald. I'll join them shortly. Victoria looked up sharply. What guests? Business associates, I explained. I'm finalizing the Chicago acquisition tonight. The sellers wanted to meet in person, and since I was already here for Mom's party, I arranged for them to come to the venue. I stood, smoothing my simple black dress. The executive lounge is on the third floor. It's where I conduct all my major negotiations. Wait, my mother said urgently. You can't just leave like this. We need to talk. We've talked plenty tonight, I replied. I've listened to detailed explanations of my failures, my limitations, and my disappointing life choices. I think I've fulfilled my family obligation. Christopher stood as well. I'll walk you out. As we moved away from the table, Victoria's voice rose behind us. This is insane. She can't just, we're her family. In the elevator, Christopher let out a low whistle. 3.2 billion. Maya, that's extraordinary. It's business, I said with a slight smile. I saw opportunities and I took them. I worked 18-hour days for years. I learned every aspect of hotel management from the ground up. I spent 6 months working as actual housekeeping staff in one of my competitors' hotels just to understand the operational challenges. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, not accusingly but genuinely curious. You never needed to diminish me to feel good about yourself, I said. You treated me with respect regardless of what you thought I was achieving. That meant more than you know. The elevator doors opened to the executive lounge, where my lawyers and the Chicago sellers were waiting. But Maya, Christopher said as I stepped out, what happens now? With the family. I paused in the doorway. That's up to them. They know the truth now. We'll see what they do with it. The negotiations took 3 hours. By the time I returned to the ballroom, the party had disbanded. Only my mother remained, sitting alone at the table surrounded by the ruins of her birthday celebration. She looked up as I approached, her makeup streaked with tears. Everyone left. I'm not surprised, I said, sliding into the chair beside her. It was a lot to process. Why, Maya? Her voice broke. Why did you hide all this from us? I considered her question carefully. Do you remember when I was 8 and I told you I wanted to be a businesswoman? You laughed and said I should aim for something more realistic like teaching. She flinched. When I got into Northwestern's MBA program, Dad said I was wasting money on a fancy degree I'd never use. When I bought my first property, you told me I was being reckless and irresponsible. I kept my tone gentle, not cruel. At every step you discouraged me. You told me to accept limitations. To be realistic. To stop dreaming so big. We were trying to protect you, she whispered. From what? From success. From proving you wrong. I shook my head. Mom, I didn't hide my success to punish you. I hid it because I was tired of fighting for validation. I realized I didn't need your approval to build something extraordinary. So I stopped seeking it. She was silent for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. I remember that conversation when you were 8. You were so serious, so determined. And I laughed because I thought you were being childish, dreaming too big. I was dreaming exactly big enough, I said softly. Your father and I, we didn't know how to encourage you. You were so different from Victoria, so quiet and internal. We understood Victoria's ambition. It looked like ours. Your dreams seemed so impossible. They weren't impossible, I said. They were just bigger than you could imagine. My mother reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold and trembling. Do you know what the worst part of tonight was? Not finding out about your success. Finding out that we missed it. We missed watching you build this empire. We missed celebrating your victories. We missed being proud of you when it actually mattered. Her words hit harder than I expected. You can be proud now. It's not the same. She wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara further. I should have been proud when you bought that first hotel. When you renovated it yourself. When you made your first profit. Instead, I was probably telling you to get a stable job with health insurance. You were, I confirmed. You called me the week after I signed the papers and told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. She let out a choked laugh that turned into a sob. I was so wrong. About everything. We sat in silence for a while, surrounded by the elegant destruction of her party. Abandoned champagne glasses, half-eaten cake, wilted flowers. The cleanup crew would arrive in an hour, but for now it was just us. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Of course. When did you decide to stop trying to prove yourself to us? I thought about that question. There wasn't one specific moment. It was gradual. Every family dinner where you compared me to Victoria. Every holiday where you offered me career advice I didn't need. Every birthday where your gifts were self-help books about finding direction in life. I smiled without humor. Eventually, I realized I was expending enormous energy trying to convince you to see me differently. That energy was better spent building my business. So you just gave up on us? No, I said firmly. I gave up on needing your validation. There's a difference. I still came to family gatherings. I still called on birthdays. I still loved you. I just stopped expecting you to understand me. My mother's face crumpled. That's almost worse. Is it? I challenged gently. Would you have preferred I cut contact entirely? Burn bridges? Refuse to attend events? No, of course not. Then I did the best thing I could do. I maintained our relationship while protecting myself from constant disappointment. I squeezed her hand. Mom, you can't unknow what you learned tonight. The question is, what do you do with this information? She met my eyes, her gaze searching. What do you want me to do? I want you to see me, I said simply. Not as a project to fix. Not as a comparison point for Victoria. Not as a disappointment or a concern. Just see me as I actually am. I'm looking at you right now, she said, her voice thick with emotion. And I see a woman who built an empire from nothing. I see someone stronger than I ever imagined. See my daughter, and I realize I never really knew her at all. The admission hung between us, painful and honest. You can know me now, I offered. If you want to. But it has to be real. No more patronizing advice. No more assumptions. No more treating me like I need saving. I want that, she said immediately. I want to know you. The real you. Not the version I created in my head. I nodded slowly. Then let's start over. Hi, I'm Maya Rodriguez. I'm 30 years old. I own a hotel empire worth $3.2 billion. I drive an old Honda because I don't like flash. I live in a penthouse with a rooftop garden. I read mysteries and historical fiction. I make a mean paella. And I'm still figuring out who I am beyond my business. My mother managed a watery smile. Hi, Maya. I'm Gloria Rodriguez. I'm 60 years old. I just realized I've been a terrible mother to one of my children. I'm prideful and judgmental. I play favorites. And I would very much like the chance to do better. That's a start, I acknowledged. She pulled me into a hug then, not the performative embrace she usually offered but something real and desperate. I'm so sorry, she whispered against my hair. I'm so sorry for every time I made you feel small. Every time I dismissed your dreams. Every time I compared you to your sister. I'm sorry for missing your life. I let myself hold her, feeling emotions I'd kept locked away for years. Anger. Hurt. Hope. Forgiveness. Not complete, not yet, but the beginning of it. Can I see it? She asked when we finally pulled apart. Your penthouse. I smiled. Would you like to see it now? 20 minutes later, we stood in my living room, 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The Harbor Towers penthouse had been my dream home since before I could afford it. I'd bought it 4 years ago and spent 18 months on the custom renovations. My mother walked slowly through the space, touching the Italian marble countertops, the custom bookshelves lined with first editions, the grand piano positioned to catch the afternoon light. She paused at the terrace doors, looking out at the rooftop garden I'd designed. You play piano? She asked, surprised. I do. I took lessons 3 years ago. Turns out I'm decent at it. She ran her fingers across the keys, producing a soft melody. I didn't know that. There's a lot you don't know, I said, not unkindly. That's what happens when you assume instead of ask. She moved to the windows, gazing out at the city lights. I can see your father's office building from here. I know. It's directly across the street. The building with the blue glass facade. You can see us, she realized. You've been watching us this whole time. Sometimes, I admitted. Not often. But yes, sometimes I look across and wonder what you're all doing. Whether you ever think about me beyond disappointment. We thought about you constantly, she protested. Did you? Or did you think about who you wanted me to be? There's a difference. She turned to face me, silhouetted against the night sky. You're right. We thought about our version of you. The Maya we wanted to fix. She walked back to the living area, settling onto my custom Italian leather sofa. Tell me about your business. Really tell me. I want to understand. So I did. For the next 2 hours I walked her through my empire. I showed her property portfolios, financial projections, renovation plans. I explained my acquisition strategy, my staffing philosophy, my long-term vision. She asked questions, good questions that showed she was really listening. The Grandview Group, she said, testing the name. Why Grandview? It was the street name of my first property, I explained. A tiny hotel on Grandview Avenue. It felt right to honor where I started. And you really did all the renovation work yourself on that first building? Most of it. I hired licensed contractors for electrical and plumbing, but I painted every room, installed every light fixture, assembled every piece of furniture. I learned basic carpentry, tile work, even upholstery repair. I had to. I couldn't afford to hire people for everything. My mother shook her head in wonder. I raised you, but I don't think I ever really knew what you were capable of. You never asked, I pointed out gently. No, she agreed. I didn't. I assumed I knew. I saw a quiet, bookish girl and decided that meant limited ambition. I was wrong. We talked until almost 3 a.m. She asked about my employees, my management style, my biggest challenges. She wanted to know about the Chicago acquisition, the Boston property, my plans for expansion. She asked about my personal life. Did I date? Did I want a family? What did I do for fun? I read, I said. I travel. I visit potential properties, but I also take time to explore. I learned Italian last year. I take piano lessons. I have a small group of friends from business school who understand the demands of entrepreneurship. Are you happy? She asked. I considered the question. I'm satisfied. I've built something meaningful. I've proven, to myself if no one else, that I can achieve what I set out to achieve. Happy is complicated. Because you're alone in it, she observed. You built this empire without anyone to share it with. By choice, I reminded her. I could have told you at any point. I chose privacy over support. Was it worth it? I looked around my penthouse. The physical manifestation of years of sacrifice and determination. Yes, I said honestly. It was worth it. I needed to know I could do this alone. That my worth wasn't dependent on your approval or anyone else's recognition. My mother nodded slowly. I understand. But Maya, you don't have to be alone anymore. Not if you don't want to be. That depends, I said carefully. On whether this is real. Whether you can actually see me differently or if this is just shock that will wear off. It's real, she promised. I can't undo the past, but I can commit to doing better going forward. If you'll let me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that this moment of understanding would last beyond tonight's revelations. But years of dismissal had taught me caution. We'll see, I said finally. This is a good start. But Mom, words are easy. Actions are what matter. Then I'll show you through actions, she said firmly. Starting with your father and siblings. They need to understand what I'm beginning to understand. Which is that we've had an extraordinary person in our family this whole time, and we were too blind to see it. The next morning my phone exploded with messages. Victoria had sent 17 texts ranging from shock to anger to something approaching respect. My father wanted to schedule a lunch meeting to discuss my business model. Various aunts and uncles had questions about investment opportunities. Marcus sent a single message. We need to talk about the Morrison estate. I deleted that one without responding. He'd find out about his embezzlement charges soon enough. Christopher's text made me smile. Coffee this week? Want to hear the whole story. No judgment, just genuine curiosity. Proud of you, sis. I was responding to Christopher when Gerald called. Ms. Rodriguez, I wanted to apologize for last night. I should have waited until after the party to approach you with those documents. It's fine, Gerald, I assured him. It was actually perfect timing. Your family seemed quite shocked. Shocked is an understatement, I said dryly. But it was time. I'm tired of hiding. For what it's worth, ma'am, you've built something remarkable. The staff has always known you're exceptional. It's good that your family knows it too now. After we hung up, I stood at my terrace doors, looking out at the city I'd conquered quietly, methodically, while everyone assumed I was failing. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rooftop garden. In the distance I could see several of my properties dotting the skyline. $3.2 billion. 17 properties. Over 800 employees across my organization. I'd built an empire while my family thought I was barely surviving. My phone buzzed again. Victoria, can we talk? Really talk? I'm sorry about last night. About everything. I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. Coffee Thursday. My office at the Grandview. 10 a.m. Her reply came immediately. I'll be there. Thank you. Things wouldn't change overnight. Years of dismissal and underestimation couldn't be erased with a single revelation. But it was a start. They knew the truth now. They knew I'd succeeded not because of their support but despite their doubt. I had spent 9 years proving nothing to anyone. I'd built my empire in silence, without fanfare, without needing external validation. And in that silence I'd discovered something crucial. I didn't need them to believe in me. I believed in myself. That was enough. My phone rang. My business line. The Chicago sellers wanted to move up the closing date. There were negotiations to finalize, properties to acquire, an empire to expand. I answered the call with a smile, looking out at my city, feeling the weight of my success settling comfortably on my shoulders. Let them think what they want. Let them doubt. Let them underestimate. I'd keep building regardless. That's what empires are made of. Not noise and flash and desperate seeking of approval, but quiet, relentless, unstoppable forward motion. I was Maya Rodriguez. I owned the skyline. And I was just getting started.